I love your video.
Oh, thank you. Hi, everyone, and welcome to my space. Oh, is that me? Am I sounding okay, or do I?
Sometimes StreamYard, give it 30 seconds. It'll be fine.
It is what it is. So, welcome to episode 6 of Practicality and Magic. I am joined by the lovely and talented Dallisa Hocking of Spirit and Spark. I'm Michelle Snelling, your host, michellesnelling.com, psychic medium and aromatherapist, external aromatherapist. So, hi, everybody. I see some people here. I've already said hi. Hi, Leona. Hi, Karen. Hi, Jeff. Let us know that you're here if you're here and what your questions are. So we are talking today. So, Dallisa, do you want to introduce yourself? Do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I'm sure some of my audience is watching this, and they've probably heard my story a few times, but yeah, you're the accidental aromatherapist, right? So I would say I'm the accidental psychic medium. Yeah, I worked in Las Vegas for a long time in the hospitality business. So the last job before I retired from hospitality was as director of community relations. And I was doing all the volunteerism and all the feel good stuff for the hotel. We had about 5,000 employees when we opened. I opened that property. And in 2013, I felt the building energetically rumbling underneath me and knew that something was shifting. So I quit my awesome job, went and traveled through Europe. And, I grew up in a family that was very spiritual. My grandmother would see full body apparitions, in her house. And my grandfather, actually, my dad's dad, because it's all on my dad's side of the family. My grandfather, his house growing up was haunted, so it goes back generations. And so I quit my job and ended up working, planning events for TCU in Fort Worth, the university, private university, the business school there. I was traveling all over the country, having a blast, and minding my own business. And I went to a retreat up in New York at the Omega Institute, which is like 100 miles north of LaGuardia Airport. Last minute book this trip and go to a workshop all about the study of synchronicity, how everything happens for a reason. I mean, how ironic could my life get, really? Yeah. So I go up there, all these synchronicities happen. I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to be here. Long story short, that night I was asleep. I had just been meditating, for a couple of days, on and off in this retreat. And my friend had just gotten a call that his aunt had died. She unexpectedly fell down a flight of stairs, died. His family called while I was sitting there. I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm going to go to bed, So I go to bed. He goes upstairs, and his dang aunt who just died hours before came through and was like, hey, I'm being a little dramatic in this part, but, she comes through and says, hey, I need you to do me a favor. I need you to tell my nephew I'm okay. I made it to the other side. I'm like, what in the actual F is going on here? So I woke up the next morning recalling what had happened. I thought, oh my God, I got to go in the kitchen and tell my friend what happened. So I go in there, I tell him the message, and he says, well, what did she look like? And I start describing what she looked like, all that stuff. And he's like, that's her. I'm like, all right, she made it. She's okay. But now my head starts going, wait, what just happened to me? Because this is all my grandmother. She would tell me these stories all the time about like the ghosts that would visit her in her house. I'd be in the room down the hall, and I'd wake up in the morning over scrambled eggs, and she'd be like, Lacey, do you know who came to visit me last night? So these are all these stories, right? So I flash back to my grandmother Eloise, and I'm like, oh my God, It happened to me. What else is trying to get through? So I go back to home to Texas, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to find some volunteers. I'm going to put my little earphones on and do a little meditation, and let me just see what else happens. And then it was like the floodgates open.
Yeah.
I'm sure my spirit team was like, she finally caught on, guys.
Yeah.
So that's been the last 6 years. So I've been doing it professionally. I've recently moved back to Texas because I think the United States is going to go a little wacky. So I moved back here, and I'm a psychic medium, 5th generation, at least 5 generations.
Yes. So that's what I wanted to talk to you about, because I'm so interested in this, because I like, I know my mom and dad, obviously, know their siblings, but my dad was an only child, but I don't know any of my family from like my grandparents back. Like, I never knew any of my biological grandparents. They all passed before, when my family was, when my parents were small. But so I love this. Like, when I hear people say I'm, third generation, whatever, I'm like, oh, I just love that, because I feel an absolute connection to my grandmas. And I really feel like a lot of my, connection comes through my dad's side, my grandma on my dad's side, but I don't have the proof. You know what I mean? Like, so that's my first question. Like, what is it like to be a fifth generation psychic medium?
I love it. I'm so glad when I put together my life plan, my soul contracts for this lifetime, I was like, listen, I'm going to need all the spiritual family members. Yeah. Because my parents are so supportive. My brother is more scientific and more fact-based. And so, yeah, and he does it for a living, where he's checking the facts and all that, all that good stuff. But yeah, I think I plotted this out, when my grandmother, she's passed away, a few years now, but in her house, she had these big photos of who would be my great great grandparents, my great great grandma Belle, where we know it all started from. And I remember every time I'd go over to her house, Grandma Ellie and I would have a little conversation. She said, one day you're going to have these pictures. They're yours. You're going to get these. And sure enough, I have them, and they're framed and they're oval. They're just gorgeous. And it was actually my great great grandparents' wedding portrait. So I have them now, and they'll be here. But I love that, the family thought far enough ahead to think, gosh, we should probably save these pictures and pass them down. And so I really appreciate those family, treasures that my grandmother, took such good care of over the years, so that I could now have them.
And I mean, that is such foresight, right? I mean, I love that, because those are treasures. They really are. So you said that it's on your dad's side, your grandmother, Eloise.
Yeah.
So, and your grandfather lived in a haunted house. So, and they're both on your dad's side.
Yeah. So it's my dad's parents. So they each had their own individual experience.
Wow. And then they come together.
Yeah.
So no wonder you're you.
Yeah. Like I said, I sat down with all of them on the other side, and I'm like, listen, we're going in. Yeah. And I'm going to be the one that's going to be there in like 2020, 2021 onward. Like, you're going to give me all the reinforcement. Yeah. Because to be here alive right now, like everybody listening to this right now, if you're here right now, like, you really signed up for it.
Whether you want to or not, you signed up for it. We're here for a purpose. So buckle up, buttercup. Is that what they say? I don't know. But, hold on. The ride's going to get bumpier. Woo! Not to be a downer. We're not here to be downers or to be like fear. But it's just the truth. It's just the truth. We have everybody that I know that is like a legit, and I want to say that, anybody that I know that's a legit medium or psychic or intuitive, all feels the same stuff. Mm-hmm. That our job is to get grounded. Our job is to root in as deeply as we can, right? Mm-hmm. So you want to speak to that, Dallisa? Because I know.
Yeah, I mean, you think this is water in here.
Did your grandma teach you that too?
I just spilled it all over the front of my shirt. That's awesome. She made the best spiked punch. The best. She'd make it. So I'm a Sagittarius. My birthday is December 14th. So if anybody wants to start shopping, I'm just kidding. But I would throw my own birthday party every year, because everybody was busy. Yeah. And so I'd have these huge parties and cook a bunch of food, and my grandmother would come. I kid you not, with this big yellow igloo drink holder, like you put like Gatorade in, you see like on the side of football games on the sidelines. And she had made this spiked punch. So yeah, she taught me well, but yeah, no, it's just water. Unfortunately, it's a little early. I got work to do.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, but there's a lot. What's that?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say there is a lot in the air. There's a lot energetically going on. You and I and a friend of ours had a conversation, earlier this morning, and we're just like, "Are you feeling this? Are you feeling that?" Because we're all getting these really heavy downloads. So thank God we have the group of us that can really connect and that do this professionally for a living. That can kind of bounce these things off of each other, because if we didn't have each other, people on the outside might just think, God, she's crazy. She's just making up all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. Send her to the loony bin. And this is kind of a new experience for me also, because I haven't had, I have intuitive friends and psychic friends for a long time, but I haven't had the type of group where I can actually say, hey, I'm feeling this, or I had this kind of a dream. Does anybody, and I love that we have that type of a connection now, that we can do that, because this is a lonely profession, right?
I wonder why I plan my own birthday parties. I mean,
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, it does. It feels like and it's not to say that we're better or anything like that, but when you literally can sense and feel and hear and see things that are coming, you and I've talked about this before. It's like, what do you do with that? How do you create a space for people where you can then, be honest without trying to, embrace a fear narrative or boost a fear narrative? Yes. But how do you come from a place of trying to be helpful? Because I do think we signed up to be psychic mediums, to help people through this huge spiritual awakening. But what do we do with it? So it's a very lonely road unless you get the same kind of downloads that we get. It can be like you're on an island sometimes. And I mean, I'm 40, I'm single, don't have any children. I devoted a lot of my life to being an entrepreneur, which I've owned several companies throughout the years, and then working in hospitality and all that. I devoted a lot of time to business, and I look back on it because sometimes I'm like, why the heck did I sign up to be like single and like no kids? Like, what the heck is this, right? But looking back on it, and this goes for everybody, I feel like your life is so divinely planned and orchestrated that I feel that spirit had to get me through different experiences, different trials and tribulations, really understand what it means to have a company. How do you market the company? How do you build a community? They had to get me through it. And then at the right exact moment, they said, she's ready, let's do it. But I had to get through all that. And I know myself, if I had been married, and God, I think about these exes I've had, and I'm like, oh my God, right? So if I was married, I think it would have distracted me. But that's just me and my experience. I think I would have gone all in there, had the whole family, all that good stuff. And my mission that I chose for this lifetime would have been either completely derailed or it would have been extremely delayed. So I trust that the plan that we all set into motion for what I'm doing is for, the highest and best. So anyway, that's my story. I'm going to stick to it.
Yes. And I love that. And I appreciate it because I too, in fact, I was just this morning in meditation, some things came into view, just some memories of some situations that worked out, not at all the way that I thought they would or hoped they would or wanted them to. But now I look back and it was perfect. And what came to me is, why do we ever question? Like, why do we ever question life and what's happening and timing and all of it? Because it's always divinely perfect. If we can just stay in that space of knowing that it's just perfect. But it is a challenge. I often wonder, I do believe that we sign up for what we're doing. right? I contracted. I said, oh, I'll come in and see dead people and talk to dead people from the time even before I could talk. Like, I have memories of being in my crib and seeing, things. And so I totally believe that. But there are just days when I'm like, what am I doing? Like, really? And then I like have a little talk with my team and God, like, so can I pause? Can I take a time out? Can I just, take a little hiatus or a sabbatical or whatever? And they're like, yeah, no, that's not how it works. And I'm like, all right, keep going. We'll keep going and doing our best. But especially 2021, this has been like a challenging year for me personally. I've got, there's just a lot of stuff going on. And I was telling Dallisa before we got on, I've been having this place where I'm just having these homesteading like drives and desires. And I just have all this homesteading energy within me, which I'm not a homesteader, people, you know what I mean? But like I am this summer, and that's all I want to do. I just want to like take care of my home, take care of my family, like create all this,
You're nesting. Yeah.
Yes, I'm nesting. Like I've never nested like this, even with my two babies. I didn't nest like this ever. So it's so interesting. Anyway, so I don't know what that's about.
Yeah, no, I love that, because to that point, what I was sharing with you earlier was, spirit. I set off this year. I knew this year was going to be funky for me, and I had talked to an astrologer late last year, and I was like, all right, spell it out. What's 2021? I'm trying to decide. I'm going to stay in Las Vegas. Do I need to move? What's going on? And she's like, well, I think she called it like the Neptune return. She's like, nobody's really going to understand you. It's going to be kind of a mystery. It's going to be kind of Alice in Wonderland type year. So you're just going to have to roll with it.
Right.
Yeah, lovely. Great. That's awesome. So, but she said there's going to be kind of this theme of returning to home. And I thought, that's interesting. So I make the decision January. Okay, I'm going to leave Las Vegas. I put everything in storage. I go stay with my parents, which I thought was going to be for about a week. And I ended up staying with them for a few months. And I wanted to wait till everything started reopening again, because of all the mandates and lockdowns and all that. So I hit the road, and I heard go to Washington and Idaho, because I'm originally from Western Washington. My parents are from Idaho. I thought, okay, that's a return to home. That sounds good. That's right in alignment with my Alice in Wonderland year of where I'm supposed to go next. So I go there, and I'm like, no, variety of reasons, but it was like, no, it was not an energetic match. So then I'm like, well, now what? And then they said, you're going to Texas. And I thought, oh my God, I can't go to Texas. There's so many people that said, oh, I'm so glad you're not living in Texas anymore, when I moved back to Las Vegas the second time. Oh, Texas, they've got their own thing. All the negativity around Texas. And I heard, Dallisa, if you want to go to Texas, go to Texas. So I go to Texas, and of course, as soon as I get here, it's like the universe goes, she heard us.
Yeah.
And like all the synchronicities start unfolding. And I'm like, really? But when I looked at the map of the United States energetically, one of the places they said that was going to be okay to live was Texas. And I thought, now wonder why all these people are feeling this nudge to go to Texas. So it's going to be really interesting to see how Texas kind of plays out on the U.S. news, the global news. I think there's more to come with what Texas has up its sleeves. But yeah, so I get here. I moved here less than a month ago, and they said, hurry up, get your house together, hurry up. And so even last night, there was a tornado watch. So I cleaned out a closet. I got on Amazon. I said, all right, if the apocalypse comes, where's that list? And so I go through my sticky notes. I'm like ordering everything. The first box shows up today. I'm like, I got to get ready. So I'm right there with you. It's that nesting energy that there's either going to be some kind of stay at home or whatever, we could talk about that or not talk about that. I don't want your channel to get flagged or mine.
Yeah, thank you. Preparedness, I think, is important. Yes. And it could be, it could go all over the spectrum. It could go from the apocalypse is coming it's just time that we take back responsibility for ourselves and become self-sufficient,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Because honestly, I'm going to say this, this work is not for the faint of heart. Somebody said that up here. I wanted to, PJ said, suit up, show up, be grateful to be here in this time and space. It's not for the faint of heart. And I believe that wholeheartedly. And the thing is, doing this work, I get messages sometimes that literally I'm shaking because they're like, what? It's like, oh no, you know what I mean? Like fear, and just like the human part of me reacts. And so, I don't want to do that to people. I don't want to instill that fear. Because I always think there's a spectrum. You know what I mean? So my team has to constantly remind me, doesn't mean that necessarily. It could mean this. Okay, great. So let's just get self-sufficient. That preparedness is for that. If nothing else, that's only going to be a good thing for all of us, I believe.
Yeah. I think you're right. You hit it right on the head. We need to be prepared within ourselves, our own healing, our own resources. Like we need to be able to sustain ourselves. Yeah, it's that line, right? Like we get these downloads. It's like, God, what do we say? Like, how do we say this? Because I have my member community and I do a real talk video every week. And they can ask whatever questions they want about the collective. It can't be about their life, but like what's going on with the US, the world, whatever. And sometimes I get these questions and I'm like, how am I going to answer this without either A, sounding completely off my rocker, or two, saying something where it's like, did I make it worse?
Yeah.
It's this fine line of like being helpful and being hurtful.
Yes, it is. And it's a huge responsibility that we have, right? Because we're here to help. We're here to support, guide, all that. And so we want to make sure that we're mindful of that and that we're coming from that space. Because honestly, not everybody is that way. There are a lot of people out there in the public eye that are just out there saying all sorts of things and creating all sorts of drama and fear. And I don't think that's helpful. I really just, think it's like, that's not our job. Our job is to educate, to help, to support. And that's part of why I started this show, because really, when I had the idea months ago, and it's like, I don't think anybody needs another YouTube show. Like, you know what I mean? Like who, but then I'm like, but it is important because practicality and magic is everything. Without practicality, we can't really be magical. And without the practicality, we just get lost in it. But we have to be able to connect to both sides of that within us. And that's, I think, what the message is with us as mediums. We have the magic. We know the messages that come, but then we've got to pull that practical in and go, now, how do we deliver this? How do we help? Because that's what we're here for. Right?
Yeah, let's be real honest, because the Sagittarius girl over here is like, I don't know anything but the truth, okay?
Yes.
So I'm going to say this. It's not going to be maybe nice, but I feel it's true that there are a lot of people out there, especially, in this industry of being a healer, a psychic, that they've got maybe the magic part down, but they're not practical, they're not grounded. And there are a lot of people out there and I see it every day scrolling Instagram, and they're so polarizing. You've got some people that are like, how dare you do this, blah, blah, blah. How dare you not do this on the other side, right? And I look at that and I'm like, who is that helping? Nobody, And so that's why at least I try, and I feel like you do a lot of the same thing, where we try to come from a neutral place.
Yes.
Where we really try to see what's going on all the way around the circle, and then look at it as, what do we need to know? What do we need to communicate? And then how do we do that in a way that's helpful, kind, gracious? Yes. But being in this industry and meeting a lot of people that do what we do, a vast majority of them do not blend practicality and magic and helpfulness together.
Amen. And that, like I said, I named my show that. It's essential. Because that's how we that's how we become who we are here to be and evolve. And, you know, Dallisa, I want to say, coming to a point that you just mentioned about, you know, the responsibility of all of us. And it's our responsibility, if we're going to be on social media, if we're going to, wherever we're going to be, to stay out of those sides. We've got to come to the middle. I got that message so clearly at the end of July of 2020. Like, they told me, like, it was like a come to Jesus with my team. They were like, get out of the fray. They're like, get into the middle and stay there as much as you can. And as you go off track, because we all do, we're human, pull yourself back, because that's the only way this is going to work for you.
Yep.
Right? It's the only way. And I got so clear, like, this is the only way I'm ever really going to have peace. This is the only way I'm ever really going to understand me and who I am and my responsibility for myself. Because I believe I don't really care what your choice is or his choice or her choice about anything. I care what my choice is. That's it. That's all. You know, we all, and I think the more that we can do that, the more we can get into the very practical space of that, of, you know, it's up to each of us to know what's in our highest good in the moment, you know?
Yeah. And at the end of the day, there's a lot of, how do I put this? A lot of out of control power.
Yeah.
And fear sells.
Oh, yeah.
And we're learning that right now, you know, whether it's the people you know on social media or you're watching, you know, TV, fear sells. And so if you feel afraid of something, you'll likely take action or you'll start creating divide. And so fear is very much intentional in our society today. So it's going to be interesting to see now that we're up against the last Uranus square Saturn that happens on Christmas Eve. And then we go into February, which is the Pluto return for America.
Yeah.
Like, this is some crazy stuff. And I think between every time I ask them, I'm like, okay, so when does this kind of switch? Yeah. When does the light switch? Like, what are we headed to? It's always like, get through 25, get through 2025. And I had a guest on my show a couple of weeks ago, numerologist. His name's Dale. And he's fantastic. But he and I hadn't talked about it, but he said, I looked at the numerology and you got to get through 2025. I was like, oh, God.
Of course that happened, Dallisa. I'm not surprised at all. And, you know, I just want to say, like, when you say 2025, my human goes, oh, shit, that's so far away. But so if anybody out there is thinking that too, just remember, like, time is going so fast right now. We're going to be there. And we don't need to worry about that. We just need to keep our eyes focused today.
Yeah. And I'm not worried about the next 3 years, 4 years ahead of us. I'm actually really excited because going back to our point we made a minute ago, we signed up to be here. So we're in it. So like, you're front row, you got your popcorn, you got your vodka, whatever, like, you're sitting there. Like, you better not close your eyes and go, oh my gosh, I can't wait for 2025. Like, heck no, let's do this. Like, this is why we're here.
This is why we're here.
I'm like, let's burn the tower down. Let's do it. The tower, the tarot card, the tower. Let's do that Phoenix Rising.
Let's do it. And I'm here for it. And like I agree. Thank you, Dallisa, for that huge call to action for all of us. We're here for a reason. Like, embrace it. Right. And that doesn't mean that we know what's coming. Like, that's one of the things that I think is interesting. There's just this little bit of how we are psychic is changing. And that leads me, I forgot I have that question. Have you noticed that your mediumship has changed at all since 2020 in the lockdown?
Oh, interesting. I think that the veil is definitely getting thinner between us and them. So sometimes the information that comes through, I'm like, all right, I'll say that out loud. You know, like if a spirit shows up and gives me something, I'm like, that's pretty specific, but sure, let's go ahead and throw it out there. You know, they're giving me really interesting information from the other side. I think it's gotten crisper clearer for mediumship. What's really been perplexing, and I've heard this from other people, is so I know it's not just me. I'd love to hear your experience about this, but with the psychic stuff, because people come to us all the time for sessions, and they'll say, oh, well, what about my love life? And I'm like, okay, here's all the energy, and I can see all the energy, and I describe it, and they're like, well, when is he coming? And I look, and I tell you what the timeline is that's there, but it's like I feel intuitively like the timeline is like jello, or it's shifty, or it's not like, and just like you said a minute ago, that things are happening so fast, I think time has changed. And so being where I could look at something and be like, oh yeah, I can call that timeline. Now I'm like, that's what it's showing me. But the timing feels weird. And Lee Harris, who I love, I've taken classes with him. He's amazing. Lee Harris Energy is his YouTube and website. But he talked about it in a recent video. And I think he said, your accuracy and timing right now, if you're somebody who makes predictions, your accuracy is going to be about 30%.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, at least I know this gentleman who has tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of followers standing up there saying that. I'm like, oh, I'm glad I'm not alone in thinking that timing has gotten weird. So where are you at with that?
Absolutely the same, because, and I think it's all to do with the timing. Yeah. I think that time is shifting, and it's taking our human selves some getting used to. We're like really having to get our bearing and, learn how to work with it in this new way. And so I think that's why the accuracy is down. And I think that's why it's, why it's a little bit wonky. The other piece that I have connected to, and I don't know if you notice this, but I've always told people, like, I can tell you what I see, and I can be real clear, but it's up to you. Like, we all have free will. But I think that's coming into play even more now because of this whole like individual responsibility thing. It's not, we're not able, even myself, like I'm not able to reach out to my psychic friends and say, hey, what's going on with blah, 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 and get a clear-cut answer. It's almost like, nope, you got to figure that out on your own now, Missy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. Does that?
It does. It does. I've experienced that too. Like, they'll show us all the energy. Yes. They'll show us, like, if you go exactly like to the point and you walk out the door and you go do that X, Y, and Z, then that's how it's going to happen, right? But yeah, I think they're trying to, Spirit, the universe is trying to get people to really step into self-healing and 100% accountability for themselves and get out of the fear narrative, get out of trying to control anybody else, like understand that safety is an illusion, like, and really just step into their own light. And I think they're trying to do that. And, I'd be curious your take on this, but I feel like the work I'm being drawn more and more to, yes, I do psychic work, card readings, mediumship, like all that stuff, right? Like, we've been doing it for years. Like, yeah, we do all that. But I feel more and more that we're being tapped on the shoulder to then step up to the plate with somebody who needs that clarity or understanding and help them see what questions they need to ask themselves. How do they walk through that? How do they get to their own resolution? I mean, we can still see the energy, but then it's like, what are you going to do about it? I think the days of like people coming for like a quick hit of like, hey, is my boyfriend cheating on me? You got 5 minutes? Perfect. Let's go. Like, I think those days are coming to a close because that's not what this energy is asking from us.
Absolutely. And I agree 100%. And that's a very practical part of what we do, right? Is providing those practical tools and that guidance to move through the energy and to, work through all this crap that we're all here to work through, right? I mean, we all have shadow work to do. We all have patterns to address and move the energy with. All of us. I don't care who you are. Everybody does. And my opinion, and I have no facts to base this on, but I don't think it ever ends. I don't care who they are, what they say. as high up as they are, whatever, if they're living and breathing human on this earth, they're still in the process of clearing closets with emotional shit. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Absolutely.
um, so my feeling is that that's, it is shifting, like how we work and what we're here for. And I'm thrilled with that because I want I want our work to be as meaningful as it is. And let me say, like, there's no greater honor for me than sitting with somebody and bringing through their loved ones who've passed away. I personally know the comfort that that brings. I know, like, I know, you know, and I always say, like, it's so crazy because I'm a medium. I know they're all around me, my
Yeah.
loved ones. I know they're here. But when I'm with a psychic medium and I get a reading and one of my family members comes through, it just gives me such peace, because it's like, it's not imagining or whatever, even though I know it isn't. But,
Yeah.
your mind is a crazy thing.
Yeah. The mediumship is definitely getting stronger as I think, they all see what we're going through and what we're about to go through. And I think they're stepping in closer to help us get through this
Yeah.
big time of transformation. So mediumship to me, it's beautiful, it's healing, it's very specialized. Not all psychics are mediums. And I've even met some mediums that aren't psychics. So it's
Amen.
interesting. Yeah.
It's
But
interesting.
I think there's beauty in the mediumship. But when it comes down to psychic questions, I think that's shifting. And so, I mean, I think you probably do this as well. When somebody comes to me and they want to ask about, money, work, love, all that stuff, it's like, yeah, we can talk about the energy, but then what's the plan of action? What are you going to do next?
Yeah.
Because if we can leave our clients better than how they came to us, I feel like we're then doing our job.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen. And that's it. And that's the practicality again, right? Because for each of us, it's not going to just come poof out the air, right? It isn't. Like, I have been working through some patterns for the past 6 months, probably deep, like heavy family shit that is just it's been such a challenge. Like, I've never been so challenged. And, but it's also so rewarding. But I've been putting the work in. I haven't just given it a look and a promise like my mom would say. I'm not doing that. I'm actually doing it. I'm doing the journaling. I'm doing the contemplation. I'm allowing it to just have its space and its time without me rushing it. Because that's what I used to do. I'm like, yeah, I'll do the work, but we're going to go and I'm going to journal and get it all done one time. You know what I mean? It's like, that's not the way it works. So patience, not my forte, but I'm learning. And I love that. I love that, we're all in this boat together, people. That's the thing. We've got to quit looking at it as us and them, or me and the world, me against the world, whatever. We're all in this together. It's many hands make light work. We've got to remember that. Like, we're here to help and support. So, Dallisa's got Spirit and Spark. If you need help with Dallisa, she's there. If you need help with me, michelleselling.com, psychic work, aromatherapy products, whatever you need, we've got you. I want to say, Dallisa, so I have a question. This is going back to the beginning of the show when you were talking about your job in Vegas and you felt like the building rumbling under you. Did you find out anything later about the company or anything about why you needed to leave?
Yeah. And it was my dream job. Even to this day, I love what I do now, but when I was climbing the ladder, because I was in hospitality for years, I think I've worked at half the hotels in Las Vegas. I remember like sitting there going, God, I love my job, but what the heck am I supposed to do? It feels like I'm not supposed to be here anymore. And what a weird feeling, right? Like you're kind of sitting in this intersection of, it's what I've wanted, and now I'm here and something isn't right. And I think a lot of us have been going through that this year and trying to figure out, what is that rhythm? What is next?
Yes.
but yeah, I was working with a Reiki master. We lost her suddenly a year ago, just really unexpectedly. But she was one of my biggest spiritual mentors, and she was doing a lot of Reiki sessions on me during this time. And I remember going to her and I'm like, listen, this is what's happening. And so we sat with it, did some introspection, some talking through it, some energy work around it. And she goes, you know what? It's one of the largest holes in the state of Nevada for their underground parking garage, and they didn't bless the land. And the land is angry. The spirits are angry. Like, oh my gosh, that makes total sense.
Yep. Yep.
But I was starting to feel it. It was there all along.
Mm-hmm.
I was just becoming more sensitive to it because I was having these Reiki sessions done, every week or two. And so I was just vibrating at this really high frequency that things started to come through. Now, in hindsight, I realized that. At the time, I was just like, why is this happening to me now? I have this great job. But it was the universe redirecting me.
Yeah. And don't you also believe, this is what I believe, that when we're in that space of love, which is the highest vibe you can be in, right? When you're in that space of love, everything just comes to you more. So it's like, of course, you loved your job, you loved what you were doing. And so the universe says, well, we're going to show you something you're really going to love, right? Because when we're in that space of, oh, I hate this, or I don't like it, we don't bring to us then the opportunities and, the ability to move to something that we'll love. It just doesn't work that way. That's universal law.
Oh yeah. We attract what we are.
Yeah.
And I look back, on how everything unfolded when I was in Fort Worth and made the decision last minute to go to the workshop that then changed the trajectory of everything. I'm like, everything literally had to work out just perfectly in order for me to see that there was the retreat, to get the cheap airline ticket, to have a spot left in class. The guy I was dating, the reason why it was so last minute, it was his birthday. And over the same date. And he came to me right before and he said, listen, I'm going to go travel for my birthday. And I thought, oh my gosh, I can go. And so it was so last minute. But had he not decided to go travel, there was all these things that had to just line up perfectly for me to be there, to receive the message from Peter's aunt, to deliver the message, then to go, wait a second, what just happened?
Yeah.
So it is so perfectly divinely orchestrated that it's why I try to tell everybody, and I just got confirmation through my whole body on that, but I try to remind everybody, be in a vibration of faith, that everything is unfolding in your favor, that everything is rigged in your favor. And if you can really get aligned with that and stay in the vibration of love and of gratitude and just thrilled that you get this front row seat, then you start attracting all kinds of stuff to you.
And amen to that, sister. I mean, that is the truth 100%, right? And there's a difference. Faith is key because hope has a little bit of doubt in there, right? We say, oh, I hope this works out. There's a little bit of questioning. That just thud. Like that energy is just, you're done. So it's got to be faith that everything is working out in your favor and that the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, wants you to succeed. So if you're not, then you've got to, again, that responsibility, right? I see this so often. I don't want to go off on this tangent, but I see this so often. And it's a story that we can get in. I've even been in it myself, but where we blame. This didn't happen because of this person, or this didn't happen because of this. And this didn't, and it's like, no. Here is where it ends. It begins and it ends here. So
Amen.
All right. So what questions do you guys have for us? And let's see, Dallisa, do I have any other questions? I don't think so. I just, you answered, it's funny, everything I had on here, you answered. I didn't even really have to ask. So thank you so much. I want to know if people have questions. So Leanna says this about Pluto. So put your questions in the comments and we'll answer them. Pluto is going to feel differently. It is going to feel differently. And I bet February might be blessings. I hope so. I don't really know. Because this is the thing. I get feelings about stuff timing wise, and it's very clear and very deep. And I'm like, I know it. I don't question it at all. And then it changes.
Yep.
So, and I'm like, you guys, like talking to my team, like, you guys, what the hell? Like, how are we? But the message is always the same thing. Ground, stay present. Eyes focused here. Not a month ahead, not 2 months ahead, not last week, today.
Yeah, I think if we can stay in the present moment, things will unlock and be understood. But yeah, we kind of get into trouble when we start, trying to figure out, well, what am I going to do next year? It's like, you might want to just get through the next couple of months. Yeah, I think one thing I could say for sure would be that by the time we get to fall of next year, I just think there's going to be so many things that have shifted and changed and revelations, and we have a lot of growth that we're in for in the next year. But I think the good news is too, is like, if you've been doing the work, if you've been doing your healing, if you've been taking accountability, if you take it back to yourself, if you've been doing it, I think you can pop the popcorn. And not to say you won't go through stuff, but like, I think you can kind of go, all right, let's see how this plays out. But if you've been somebody who's been in that like prisoner kind of mentality, shackled to the old program's beliefs, and you're holding on for dear life, hoping and praying, right, that like nothing happens, I think it's going to be a really, really tough period of time ahead of us. And I do think that there will be a lot of people that will be opting out of Earth and saying, maybe I'll try this again later, or they're going to be called to another destination, whether it's by their own choice or by a universe, God's choice. It's like there's going to be some rearranging, I think, of the people that are going to be here on Earth as well.
I agree 100%. And again, it's about personal responsibility and choice. Are you willing to do the work, right? And that's the thing that, like I said, this past 6 months for me, it's been like, okay, are you gonna walk the walk that you've been talking about all these years, with your clients? And I've done the work, but never have I been asked to do it in this way. So it's been a challenge. And I want to address what Claire says here. Oh, well, first, let's go to Abigail. Sorry. How can we thin the layer between the messages and our human mind blocking them? Great question. Thank you, Abigail.
So how can we thin the layer between the messages and our human mind blocking them? Yeah, I tell my students, my psychic development students, I'm like, just set the intention and get the heck out of the way. Mm-hmm. Because if you sit there and you're trying to overanalyze, it means you're too much in your head. Yep. If you're thinking like, oh, do I say this? Do I not say that? What is that card trying to say? My intuition's telling me this, blah, 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 blah. It's too much chatter. If you just open up through meditation, through your heart space, and go into it knowing that the messages that come forward are meant for the person that you're connecting, with, then you'll start to just let it flow. So if you feel like you're blocking it, you're too much here, which means I would say drop more down to the heart, do some kind of heart chakra or heart centered meditation. There's a technique called sitting in the power that you can do as a, mediumship, where you're just kind of connecting down, connecting up, and just bringing yourself into the present moment and letting it flow. It's usually because we're just afraid we're going to get something wrong, or we're going to say something that we shouldn't be saying. We just start doubting everything.
Yep. And, I'm just going to add on to what Dallisa said, just ground. Like we're up here, we live the majority of our life up here. We need to drop from there down into the body, become embodied, and trust. Like, give the information. I remember when I was taking a class and we were doing psychometry, and my partner didn't bring anything. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'm not just going to sit here. I'm going to see if I can tune into anything. And so I did, and I got a whole bunch of information from her grandfather. But the thing, he kept showing me Savannah. And I'm like, Savannah, what is Savannah? And I wrote all this stuff down, and I wrote Savannah. I kept asking her, and she's like, no, I don't have a connection to Savannah. I don't have a blah, blah, blah. And then he just kept showing it to me though. And all of the other information was there. So I thought, well, I must have gotten it wrong. And then I overheard her like 10 minutes later talking to somebody about her and her husband were on the internet the night before looking for tickets to Savannah. And I'm like, well, of course, you know what I mean? It seems so like incidental, and like she was thinking like a big connection. Anyway, but trust yourself. If it's coming through, just trust it and go with it. And, you know, even if the person that you're reading doesn't get it, there is a thing called psychic amnesia for sure. We forget. I've forgotten stuff before when I'm being read. And then later I have to email the person and go, oh, and by the way, you were trying so hard to deliver this message and I wasn't taking it and it was correct. You know what I mean? So just go with it. But okay. Oops, let's see. I want to do Claire. So my world is shifting and I feel a little grief and loss, but I have no real reason to know that I have lost anything for real. I feel a loneliness and a sense of being removed. Could use some clarity. I just want to speak to grief for a moment, Claire, because I've been in it so heavily for the last 6 months. Grief is not something we can master. We can only manage it. It has a life of its own, and it's going to speak to you in the way that it needs to. And what I have found with grief is that it is very interesting in that it like can bulldoze you. You can feel like overwhelmed. And then you'll have periods where you feel just fine, and then it'll come back. So just give it the time and space it needs. Do you have anything to add to that, Dallisa?
I think that was beautifully said. Isn't it amazing, this human experience that we have with this body and this heart and this head? And yeah, I think, you know, what's helped me sometimes is, yes, honoring the grief and going inward and reflecting on that sadness and maybe even looking at pictures or thinking about memories that I had with somebody. But I also feel, for me at least, that I have to like leave the house, because sometimes I can get so swallowed up, whether it's the fear, you know, the grief, the sadness, that I have to physically force myself to go do something. And being around other people and other energy tends to break it up for me, so that I can go back home and feel like I've stepped into a different energy. So sometimes leaving my house helps.
I love that. And it is true. Like, we need to just get movement, just allow the emotion to have movement. And oftentimes, especially with grief can feel like suffocating. And so we tend to like death grip it. And then we don't allow any movement. And grief wants to move. It's just like all the other emotions, it wants to move. So we want to give it space, and we want to do whatever we can to get it to break up and move. And also, I feel I created a blend last year in November. Well, I created it in like August because I knew what was coming, but I just felt this tremendous grief in the collective because of everything that was going on. We have our entire lives have changed, right? And whether we like it or whatever, there's grief to the change. It's human nature. So honor that grief, even if you don't know where it comes from. It might be just the collective. So just be aware. All right. Karen says, we've got so many questions. Thank you, guys. I too feel like timelines are shifting rapidly. It's very challenging to know what is going to happen. Stay present and in the frequency of love. Yes. I love that, Karen. Thank you. I've been struggling with where I will be moving to and when. I know what area, but it seems out of reach. Can you give me a lead, please? Do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, let me tune in for a second. So if you want to go to another question, and
I'm just going to say, I feel like it's west. Ms.
Yeah, I'm
Rosie.
seeing lots of trees.
What?
I'm seeing lots of trees.
Yeah. So I don't know if that makes sense.
I'm hearing water.
Yeah, go west. West.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pointing west in my directional. So go west.
Yeah, I'd go where you have like natural water that's flowing through and where there's trees. So, and I'm seeing like a little, what do you call those? Squirrels. So yeah, I'd go where there's nature, but I would agree with that. And it could even be like Pacific Northwest. I think like because I was faced with this year, I think you just sometimes have to get in a car, go on an airplane, and just kind of be in the physical space, and you'll know it. And you might not know why it's that space, but you'll know because you'll have all these synchronicities unfold, and it will just come together really easily.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I want to go back and just acknowledge some of these comments. Buddha Warrior says,
Aww, you do.
So much. I appreciate that. And then there was another one, Amy Domingo.
Oh, yay.
For Dallisa shows. Thank you. I love being on Dallisa shows. Hers are so much fun. And I just wanted to make sure that I didn't miss those. And, you know, I love Dallisa, you saying about being in the car. I mean, my husband and I we go on drives all the time because there's just something about being in the car. It's like you're grounded, your tires are on the road, you're out in this open space, you can just breathe. It's different. And so I get a lot of clarity when I do that. If I'm feeling congested up here, I get in the car. So
yes, Miss Rosie, go drive through Montana, because Montana is all the trees, and I think they've got water there. They've got to have water somewhere. But I would focus
a lot of water.
Oh, okay. So I'd focus on like the areas where you're going to find forests and also natural bodies of water.
Yeah. Yeah. And is that west for you, Ms. Rosie? I would love to know that. So, yes. And PJ, if we can feel good and thrive now, just imagine in a few months, and thriving is the key, because we don't want to just survive. Like, we are done with surviving. We have done that for decades, right? Yeah. Pushed ourselves to the limit of just surviving. We're here to thrive. Okay. Dana wants to know, do either of you get messages from pets that have crossed over?
It's just like yes, we do.
In general,
specific. Yeah, I talked to alive pets, past pets. Like, oh yeah, I remember I had a show in Las Vegas, and I was standing on stage one day, and this happened multiple times, and like the most random spirit pets would show up, and they belonged to the people that were sitting in the chairs. I had a turtle show up one time.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's there's no telling what's going to show up when you're doing mediumship. It's just like a total free for all. You don't know. You just have to be open to everything and anything, because it all happens. So Dana, I don't know if you have a cat, and it feels like it, if you had a cat, but it feels like not necessarily a calico, but those colors, kind of grays and white. I'm feeling that, and very like a loving cat, like almost more like a dog energy is what the cat feels like. So I don't know if that makes sense, Dana. Claire says, I'm not sure what I'm grieving for. And Claire, that's kind of what I referenced of, it might just be grief in the collective, because that's big right now. So don't be too hard on yourself. Just give it some space, and maybe get out of the house and break it up, like Dallisa said. And Abigail said, did you figure out who's living in your house yet?
Oh my gosh, I was in the kitchen the other day, and I looked over. I kind of like have to do this thing where I lean over and look down the hallway. Oh yeah, the light was on again. Like, oh, perfect. But what do I expect? I bought a house in the historic district of this town I live in, so it's got a lot, I'm sure, that it's been through in the last 80 years. But no, I haven't sat and asked, because I'm afraid if I sit and ask, they'll just start doing all kinds of stuff.
Oh yeah.
Now that they've heard me, I'm like, oh boy. So no, I'll keep you posted.
I have to, that just makes me think of the first house that my husband and I bought. An old house, like this area that we live in. It was like one of the first houses in the area, because in Salt Lake, when Brigham Young settled this area, he sent families out to different areas for different things. So the area that I live in was where all the dairy farms were. So this woman owned a bunch of land and built this home in 1938. And it was like one of the main homes in this area, a beautiful Tudor. Anyway, we bought the house, and like we moved in that weekend, And Monday I came home for lunch because I lived really close. And like literally, I put the glasses in the cupboard to the right of the sink. And I came home and they were in the cupboard on the left. And I thought, well, Jeff did that because this is in the time frame when I had closed everything off. I had a period when I was in college and I just shut down. And so I hadn't opened it up. So I thought, well, Jeff did, my husband did that. So then when he told me he didn't, I just moved everything back and he told me he didn't. And I was like, what? This is crazy. So then things just kept happening, weird things, but I kept like passing them off. And then we had the 1938 refrigerator and stove were still in the kitchen. And I loved it because it was so cool looking. I love antiques, but it was like unfunctional. We couldn't use it. So for every day. So we got another refrigerator and put that refrigerator downstairs. It was my husband's beer fridge. And I would go downstairs and the plug, it would be unplugged and the plug would be up draped over the top of the refrigerator. And I would say to him, "Quit unplugging the refrigerator." And he'd say, "I'm not." Anyway, so the one day we had this conversation forever. So it was like New Year's Eve of that year. And we had a house full of people and it got unplugged again. And I said, "You got to really stop this. This is not a joke." And he's like, "I'm not doing this." So we were together. I went back downstairs and it was unplugged again. And then I realized, oh my God, this is the woman who built the house. She's upset that we aren't using her stuff. And then I like connected all the dots. Before we bought it, the lady that owned it rented it out and they were drug dealers and they like trashed the house. So she was worried about her house. And so I had this talk with her and I'm like, we love this house.
Yeah.
We cherish it. Whatever. It never happened again. And then we were so protected in that house, the stuff that happened. It was so beautiful and divine. So, Dallisa, have the conversation. It might be really good.
Yeah, they've shown me that this house, I needed to be in this house. And I actually had a vision because I asked them, because when I first, I've been here almost a month, the first week was tough. Mm-hmm. Where I didn't understand why'd you want me here? It's all the things you shouldn't do is ask why, because you're supposed to be there.
Yeah.
And I had this vision and it was Native Americans and they were handing me some artifact and they're like, "We need you here." I'm like, okay. Because my very first past life memory was myself as a Native American. And so to see them hand over, and I've had different shamans tell me, well, you have this Native American council that's part of your spirit team, and I felt them. So there's something I'm supposed to be doing here, but we'll see. Actually, my realtor is a Reiki master, and of course, somebody connected me with him, which is part of the synchronicity. But he and I are already talking about developing some kind of spiritual group here in this town. So it's all together. Yeah, but he's Native American. Yeah.
Oh, of course he is. Right? And that's going back to what I said earlier, why do we ever question? Like, why do we ever? And I have people asking me why all the time. And I just say, we're not even going to go there. Yeah. Like, get out of the why. The why keeps you stuck. The why keeps you stagnant. It keeps you in the space of, it lowers your vibe. So don't even go there. But it's human to go there. So when you go there, just be compassionate and gentle and move through it. Mm-hmm. All right. So Karen, your kitty Butter recently passed away and that description fit her. Oh, I love that. Well, she's here, Karen. I love that. And Dana, I'm sorry that wasn't your cat. That was all that was coming through. Barbarella, I don't know about a German Shepherd.
I just got my check mark though in my third eye, which is confirmation that he's still around. Yeah. Yeah.
And I was going to say, Barbarella, have you had a lot of dogs? Because I feel a lot of dog energy around you. So I don't know I just feel like a lot of feline energy. Maybe that's a totem for you as well. I don't know. But Amy says, I'm working waking up in the middle of the night all the time. I doze back off and hear a loud bang or noise. No one else seems to hear it. Dog doesn't respond. Am I crazy? Absolutely not.
Welcome to our world, Amy.
Hello. Yeah, it's just what it is. It's
the veil thinning. We're just going to all be hearing all kinds of stuff.
Yes. And it's purposeful. It's meant to thin for all of us, right? Because I've always told everybody, like, this is not it's not, everybody is psychic. Everybody can be a medium. I don't think everybody's meant to be, but it's like, and that old fashioned radio dial in the car where the fuzz, we're all on there. Some of us are just dialed right in and some of us aren't. And it's okay. But we're meant to really exercise this muscle for ourselves now, right? Yeah. And Amy says it scares the crap out of her, but I'm sure it does. But just go with it. Go with it. I mean, and just if something wakes you up, you might just ask, like, is there something I need to know? Or the other thing, and this is really important, I had to do this, boundaries. Psychic mediums don't typically have good boundaries. I mean, we're notorious for being, for having wonky boundaries because we want to help and heal and be available and all that. That's a whole other show. But I had to set a boundary, and I have to do this about every 4 to 6 months. But I tell not dreams, not that, but people just waking me up for stuff, I have to say I'm not available. I'm available between the hours of like 10 a.m. and 9 p.m. If you need me, come. I'm open. But from 9 p.m. to 10 a.m., I'm off duty.
And they'll honor it. Oh, yeah.
They have to. But we have to set it and mean it. And it's important because my energy was being depleted so terribly because I wasn't sleeping. And we can't function if we don't sleep. So, you might want to think about that. That's a message for everybody, right, Dallisa?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I teach my students, you got to set the boundaries because you can't always be open for business 24 hours a day because they'll keep knocking.
Yeah, they won't let you go, right? They're lined up going, she's open, we're there.
Yeah.
Right? It's like all day, every day. So I had to do that a long time ago. And I have to reinforce those boundaries because I'll notice that things start happening and then I'm like, oh, I got to redo it. I got to reset it and whatever. So, all right. Well, Dallisa, why don't you tell everybody, and we've got a lot of your people here. Tell everybody where they can find you and, what you've got going on right now.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that Sherry just asked, what would you recommend for opening up that communication? I actually have a free class that's coming up, which is perfectly timed. Thank you, Sherry, for teeing that up for me. I'm teaching a Mediumship 101 class. It's on spiritandspark.com. If you click on the class calendar, I think it's the 26th. So if you go on there, you can sign up. There's a space still available. So anybody can go and claim that free class pass, join me. We're going to do it live. I'm saying you're not going to get the replay because I want you to show up live because I'm all about creating the community, not just another email in your inbox that might be watched eventually. So if you are serious about opening up that communication, grab that free class pass on spiritandspark.com. Yeah. And then Instagram, Facebook, all that at Spirit and Spark. Yeah, I do my live show on Mondays, my weekly forecast, and we have Mysteries with the Medium. So Michelle and I will be doing that later this month, and it's going to be a spooky themed Mysteries with the Medium. So that'll be fun.
Can't wait. Can't wait. All right. And then I'm Michelle Snelling. You can reach me at michellesnelling.com. That's Michelle with one L, Snelling with two. Right now, I've got several things. This is my birthday month. So I've got lots of celebrations going on. I do this every year. So right now, this week, I have got, if you subscribe to my YouTube channel, everybody that subscribes to my YouTube channel this week will be entered into a drawing for a free reading with me. So that is an incredible deal. So subscribe. I appreciate it. And I love to give back that way. I've also got my Grown Up Timeout Plus, my membership that just began yesterday. There's still time to get it. It's about 6 weeks of community. It's ceremony, creation, connection, and community. We do live things. You get a pampering kit that is off the charts this season. I can't believe it. This season I have termed the season of alchemy. So we're connecting, and it's all about releasing everything that's covering up the alchemist within us. So we're going to have a lot of fun this season. And I'm doing a free mediumship evening for my members only on the 1st of November. So it's that alone is worth the price of the Grown Up Timeout. If you're interested in that, that's on my website, michellesnelling.com. If you want any product recommendations, I love to do that. I can do that for you. And I will be back on Monday, the 18th, with another episode of Practicality and Magic. So I'm working on that right now. Got several things in the works. I'm not positive what it's going to be, but I should know in the next day or two. I'm feeling like my team's going to let me know. And we will see you all then. And thank you, everybody, for being here. And Dallisa, thank you so much for being on this special episode for October and Mediumship. I appreciate all of your incredible insight and guidance for all of us, and love you all. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. It was fun.